Hey everybody, welcome back to a new video. In this one, I am going to give you my complete review on The Evil Within. I completed The Evil Within, I believe it was earlier this week. Don't even have it going. I have it now playing in the background, my walkthrough of the game. So technically, spoiler alert, if you have not played this game, it's only going to show approximately the first 20 minutes of it, so it's not like you're going to see too much. But like I've said before, I would rather you guys be watching something in the background while you're listening, if you so choose, rather than just seeing a blank screen or one picture the whole time. So let's get right into it. Interest value. The game itself, if I remember correctly, came out in 2014, so it's about 7 years old now. I remember the amount of hype in the media, in the gamer community, when this game was about to come out. I think horror games in general have a really good reception in the gamer community. Horror seems to be one of those genres that gamers just enjoy in general, more so than any other genre, which I find quite interesting. So I remember how excited the community was when this game was first coming out. I also remember that it had been something my husband had been super excited for, so I ended up pre-ordering it for him so he could see it, so he could play it, I should say. So he could play it, and he was super stoked. Finished it, I don't even know how quickly, and absolutely adored it. It was probably one of his favorite gifts from me, which is pretty sad. But he was a real big gamer back in the day. More so than now. I've pretty much taken the torch when it comes to gaming. The most amount I see him do anymore is Dead by Daylight. And even that gets him super frustrated. So I've kind of taken over the torch. But anyway, back to the discussion at hand. Looking at the case, I am actually quite smitten with this case. I think it is very well done. It definitely grabs your attention, whether you're a fan of the horror realm or not. The cover is a pretty light background. It's white with some streaks of gray, and the border is a darker gray, so it pops the image in the center. It happens to be, I believe it is Sebastian from the game. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's just his face looking up towards the top of the case. And he's got barbed wire wrapped around his face with his mouth open as if he's screaming. It looks like he's got red eyes, possibly. And then right above him, facing downwards, is the Evil Within logo, all in red, as it is on the screen right now. It looks just like that, except red. And the stake that makes up the T in the I in Evil and the I in Within is right above his eye on the cover. So I think the front of the cover is absolutely fantastic. Plus, the designer of the case was smart enough to put one little piece of information on the front, a rating from the Game Informer, which states 9 out of 10, a wonderfully horrifying experience. So I think that was quite well done, just because, yeah, it kind of butts into the cover a little bit, but it does let you know, it is a pretty high-ranking game. If I remember correctly, many critics rated this a 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10 game, and as you'll see in the end, I pretty much agree with that. It is a great game. I did not have too many complaints about it. It is a mature, I can't even speak English. It is a mature rated game, so there's that, which, so it kind of tells you right off the bat, it's pretty scary. There's plenty of gore. If you had watched the videos along the way as I played, you know that it has to be one of the goriest games I've played for the channel yet. Resident Evil doesn't tend to have a lot in that realm. It's more of a thriller, action, adventure with some scary moments. More like, I don't even know if I'd call it a horror in general, but it does fit into that realm. It is taken as such. But this more so definitely belongs in the horror realm. I have not had more jump scares in my life than this game. Just when you think you're safe, something else pops out at you. But I'm going off track again. The back of the case. It shows Sebastian in the middle of a small town with some houses, a sunset in the background, and a couple zombies after him. And they've got some quotes from different places. So, from game trailers, they say, a survival horror masterpiece. And IGN states, brutal, challenging, and remarkably fun. So, the synopsis on the back says, enter the mind of a madman. After witnessing the slaughter of fellow officers, Sebastian is ambushed and knocked unconscious. When he awakens, he finds himself in a deranged world where hideous creatures wander among the dead. Facing unimaginable terror and fighting for survival, Sebastian embarks on a frightening journey to unravel what's behind this evil force. It is a one-player game. There is no way to play two players. And the other thing that a lot of people didn't realize was, and I don't think too many games are like this, unless they're really big names, this game required a shit ton of space for whichever system you're playing on. It was about 50 gigs of storage was required for this game. The only other game I can think of that really took up that much space was Dead by Daylight, and then Shadow of Mordor took up quite a bit of space. And I think some of the Halos might have done the same. But this is a big game. One of the longest I've played, obviously. If it took me 32 episodes to complete it, then it definitely took a while. So, the back also shows a couple more images. You get a picture of Sebastian. It looks like he's laying on the ground and somebody's right behind him after him. There's a couple pictures of different kinds of monsters and zombies. There's one picture of him facing off against Safehead in the game. So, to me, the cover was absolutely fantastically well done. I love the cover. Totally grabs your attention, whether you're a horror fan or not. It is very easy to see, since they decided to, as I said, lighten up the center and darken the border. The center of the cover totally jumps out at you. It's easy to pick out among other game covers, especially with the bright red of the title and Sebastian's face at the bottom in absolute terror. So, it totally grabbed my attention. It's the first game I've reviewed for my channel that I'm going to give a perfect 10 out of 10 for the cover and interest value. I think it's fantastic. Yes, horror does not intrigue everybody, but how can you be a gamer and not enjoy playing horror? I mean, like, come on. Totally an opinion, I know. But that's just what I think. I mean, horror's some of the best games to play ever. It's so different and thrilling, exciting. It really gets you into the game. Like, come on. Who doesn't like horror? We all like to be scared. You can't tell me that you don't. So, that's that one. Second, ease of control. The controls were pretty easy to learn for the most part. This is one of those games where if you play for a while, get all used to the controls, and then quit playing, if you try to come back, they do not come back naturally. If you've, let's just say, gone away for a month or so and try to come back to this game, you will probably forget how all the controls work. You pretty much have to use every single button for any kind of action. You've got one button for crouching, one for running, one for reloading, one for pulling out your weapons, one for seeing your inventory, one for throwing grenades, one for using matches. one to move, one to swivel around. You were pretty much using almost every single button. They were all different. And if you were not careful with how you set up your inventory, you could accidentally use up matches without meaning to. You could accidentally use health on yourself without wanting to, which is something my husband did quite frequently, which I found hilarious because he would get mad every single time. But I made sure I put it somewhere in my inventory where I was not going to accidentally use it a lot. And I stayed away from that button in particular. So I think that only happened one time for me through the whole game. So, also, the controls, like most games, are able to be changed in the main menu. So most of the other games, I believe I gave a 10 out of 10 for ease of control. However, I decided to bump this one down to a 9 just because there's so many to remember and you can get them messed up. And if you click a wrong one, you're kind of either fucked and dead or you're going to use something you didn't mean to. So I decided a 9 out of 10 was pretty fair. Graphics. Oh my gosh, you guys. If you're watching the playthroughs, or even just now, the graphics are phenomenal. For a 2014 game, I'm still astounded that the graphics are as good as they are and compared to some of today's games. They're so good. I mean, especially for a horror game. When you're going to play a horror game, you want something that's got crisp detail, attention to detail. You want to be able to see the perfect spattering of gore and entrails flying and cavities and bodies, and especially for zombies, they're supposed to be horrifying looking, and it's just perfection. Even the sound is amazing. Every time you happen upon an enemy chewing out someone's insides, you can hear the gushing noises and I want to use the word squelch, and the squelch of their innards as blood slops out of their body. It's amazing. And I probably sound like a complete creeper and a psycho when I say this, but the sounds were on point. Even the music was fantastic. They knew exactly how to put the scary moments right at the perfect time of the music. They would hype up the music super high, and then either nothing would happen or somebody would jump out and try to get you. It was a perfect balance. So graphics, I totally gave it a 10 out of 10. I mean, it's amazing. Even for it being a in third person game, it felt like you were totally in it and experiencing it. It's really good. Freedom. This game does have some semblance freedom of play. If you don't pay attention to certain areas of the map that are pretty decently sized, you can miss things, such as stuff for your inventory like health or ammunition. So, but it does follow a set story as most games do. So you can go off and explore and do some other things that makes the game longer, or you can just stick to the main story, but it does have some freedom of play in it. You can make different decisions, not do certain things. So I decided to just give it a 9 out of 10. Now thinking about it, I might have done an 8, but I already did a 9, so we're just going to leave it at that. Granted, that was my first impression right after playing it, so that was a fresh... I wrote this review fresh right off of completing it. So, your opinion, I believe, right after finishing a game is going to be completely different than your review after you've settled and chewed on your ideas a bit longer. So, there's that. So, game story. The story is very unique. And it definitely draws you in from the beginning. If you are a fan of psychological horror, such as things like Saw, this is definitely a game that you want to pick up. It is absolutely thrilling. It's a complete mindfuck in an intense way. There's always things happening around every corner. And the more you play, the more you think, how did this creator think of these things? Like, what kind of sick-minded freak came up with the idea for this game? And in all honesty, I'm not, like, super up in the gaming industry where I know every single game that's ever been created. But as long as I've been around, I don't remember any other game that has had this much of a psychological impact when you play it. just think of how brilliant the idea was of making a game where you are stuck in the mind of a complete psychopath. Like, you play as a guy that's stuck in the mind of someone who was in an insane asylum. Like, to me, that is like a brilliant storyline. That would be a perfect movie. Like, it's fantastic. I cannot, like, I'm gushing over it because it was that good. And I'm not even most of the time someone that would just go, oh yeah, totally love horror games. Like, all I do is play horror games. No, it's something I do on the side. It's not even my favorite genre. It's not even my favorite genre of movies, but everybody likes that thrill. But this one in particular, I was super impressed with. So the story itself to me, it's very easy to understand as long as you read all the files you encounter while playing the game and you pay attention to the cutscenes and don't just rush through the game. It is easy to understand. I did read other reviews of people that completely dogged on this game just because they couldn't understand the storyline. And what I have to say to that is the fact that it has nothing to do with the writing or how they made the game. It has everything to do with the fact that you didn't pay the fuck attention and you just rushed through the game, didn't try to sit back and enjoy it. And honestly, the story plot probably went over your feeble little brain. You have to have you don't even have to have in-depth, intense thinking to understand this game. All you have to do is pay attention, have a little bit of brain power, and it's a very easy story to understand. It's super simple, and it's so well done. So, yeah, as long as you paid attention and listened to the recordings and read the files, you would understand everything that's going on, and it would make perfect sense. There's no way you can't get it unless you're a complete buffoon, which I guess there are plenty of people like that. But, as I said, so to me, while the game has a great story, I did dock it and give it a 9 out of 10. Just for the people out there that are like, no, it's too hard to understand. Okay, I will cater to you for this one time, and I'll just give it a 9 out of 10, but in reality, it probably deserves a 10. This is a good game, guys. Take my word for it. If you don't have it, if you've never played it, I don't care that it's 7 years old, freaking buy it. It's amazing. If you love horror, do it. On to extras. The game has some extras besides the storyline itself. There are achievements to do for any console or Steam that you play on. Throughout the game, there are these little statues that you can find. I just called them Mary statues. I don't know who they were. But if you break them, there's keys inside them. There's also other ways to get keys. But the keys can be used in lockers, like police station lockers, or gym lockers, however you want to say it. They're little square lockers, like evidence lockup lockers. When you get to your save point, which is separate from the game itself, you can use these keys to unlock any of the lockers you want, and there was probably a good 50 lockers, if not more, probably more. And I think I only opened about half of them, or maybe even 2/3 of them. So there are a crap ton of keys throughout the game that you can look for. A lot of them were not obvious. You really had to pay attention to the map you were on. I mean, some of them were up in ceiling windows. Some of them were hidden inside bodies. You really had to pay attention if you wanted these keys. Also, there is new weapons scattered throughout the game. You have to pay attention to your surroundings or you will not find these weapons. The shotgun came pretty close to the beginning of the game. It was in a case, so that one was pretty easy to find. But within the same area of the game at the beginning, you also could find the Agony crossbow. However, it was not in a case. It was just leaning against a piece of furniture. So if you did not pay attention, you would miss it. Granted, the game does kind of fix your oops sometimes. And if you missed a weapon, it would present it to you maybe a chapter or two down the road. You just had to find it once again. So the game kind of babied you a little, except when it came, as to my knowledge, when it came to the Magnum. The Magnum was a one-shot deal. You find it or you don't get it. So I just happened to find it. Because the Magnum is not till closer to the end of the game. I think that was more like chapter 11 or 12 before we found that. Didn't end up using it because I thought I was going to save it for the final boss, but I didn't even need it. So the Magnum was pretty cool. It wasn't even really that hard to find as long as you paid attention to the map and you pretty much explored. If you explored everywhere you could find it. There's no way you could miss it. I think the crossbow was harder to find just because it wasn't in a case that was silver and glinting in the light for you to obviously see. So there's those things, and then whenever you could get to a save point, you could find these green jars of goop. I call it brain goop. That's how I've always called it. It's what my husband calls it. It's what some other gamers call it. It's just easier to say just because it has a picture of a brain when you pick it up. So it's just like, okay, brain goop or brain juice, however you want to say it. You get to use this brain goop for upgrades, and there's quite a few options. So you could upgrade things like your stamina, or how fast you run, or how fast you recover, or upgrade your weapons, or your ammunition, or your stock. There were so many options you could pick, and really depending on how you pick would be how well off you are later in the game. So you kind of had to be wise with some of your choices, also depending on what difficulty setting you set your game to. If you set it to hard, then you really got to be wary what you use your goop for. I can tell you that much now. See, like right here, here's an example of a note. You read the note. Some of them were not required or weren't super important to the game, but they were kind of nice to see what was going on. It kind of explained it a little bit better. So basically, where was I? In my opinion, these weren't super interesting extras. They were just little things on the side you weren't necessarily required to do. Oh, and then there was also like puzzle pieces of the map that you could find. I think there were 30 of them. I think I ended up finding 27, of course, missing 3. But if you put it together, it makes the map of this Crimson City, I think. And then something's supposed to happen, but I'm not sure. I looked it up at one point in time, but I totally forgot what it was. So I'm going to have to go back and find those other pieces because I really want to find out what happens. Plus, got a platinum this game too. It's added to my list of other ones that have not been done platinum yet, but we're going to get there eventually. So there's that. So for extras, I gave it a 9 out of 10. Time. As I've stated numerous times, games get 1 point per hour of gameplay, and I consider my time for games a little bit longer than average just because I do look around, I do pay attention, I do take my time on certain points because I try not to die, believe it or not. I'm not a speed runner. I like to enjoy the game I play. So sometimes it takes me a little longer to play them just because I try to think things out like it's a chess game. I want to make smart decisions, especially when it comes to horror games like this one where you have a limited amount of like goop or money to do upgrades or purchase things. I don't like to just, spend and be like, okay, YOLO. I like to think it all out. So, even so, this game took me 16 hours to complete. I did die 23 times, which I find absolutely hilarious. I do not remember dying that many freaking times. I thought it was like, oh, okay, maybe a dozen. I thought that was being generous. No, 23 times. I was like, okay. So, it is definitely a long game. So you're in for the long haul once you start this game. But I do think it keeps you interested enough where you're not going to get bored of the storyline. Unlike some other games, so some might say like Resident Evil, you tend to stay in the realm of one area sometimes. Or like you could say Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, you pretty much stay around the area of Raccoon City, mostly the police station or the subway. You don't go too far. This game, considering you're in a guy's mind, you're going to all sorts of places. Every single chapter was a different place. You only revisited the same place maybe once or twice just for a flashback. But every area was different. So, tons of things to do. Tons of time to play this game. So, obviously, this one got a 10 out of 10 in time just because it took so damn long. Replayability. It has some replayability, but this game, like I said, is so long that many people may not want to replay it. So, it's a hard game to replay, just in my opinion, because of that reason. Since it takes so damn long to go through it, you're like, oh man, I can't imagine playing it again on a harder level, because it just draws out so long. I mean, you probably could come back after a couple years and replay it, but not right away. There's no way. Like Resident Evil 8, I came back right away and played another round just because it was that fun, and it did not take as long as this one. But the thing I do like about this game is that in other games, when you finish, you get like a new game plus or whatever, so you can continue with all the weapons you had before. You can do this on this one too, but on top of that, you also have the ability of picking a specific chapter and replaying a chapter instead of the whole game in case there was something you missed in that chapter. So like I can go back and get those 3 map pieces that I didn't get before without having to play the whole game over again and finding every single goddamn piece. I can just go to the individual chapter, go find my piece, finish the chapter, save it, and voila, that part is done. So this might be a little easier to platinum than some of the other games, so for that I am grateful. But in realm of replayability, definitely gets an 8 out of 10. Price. Oh my gosh, definitely worth it. Like I said, pre-ordered this. I think I paid 40 or 50 bucks for it at the time. That was 7 years ago. So in today's era, it is definitely worth the price considering that the game is 16 plus freaking hours long. And you get, it also, a year or so after it came out, they had at least 2 DLCs that came out after it. I did not play them. I, however, did watch somebody else play them, and they're pretty interesting. It explains more backstory. So if you're someone who went through this whole thing and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened to Joseph? Or what was Kidman's role in this whole thing? Play the DLCs. It gives you an explanation. So those were pretty nice to see myself, even though I did not play them. So definitely for price, I think it was definitely worth it. 10 out of 10. Now, my personal score. I think I've kind of ranted on this game enough. Like, I do enjoy it. Not my favorite game in the world, but if I'm going to play a horror game, this one, it hits the top. It was really good. So, and I almost died right there. If you can't tell, I totally got his attention. He's coming at me like, So, personally, I'm going to give it a high rating. The game is good. It has a great story. It kept me intrigued. I gotta say, for an enemy, Ruvik, oh my god, brilliantly well done. Like, I'm not usually one that agrees with villains you usually can't give me the simp for a villain. But Ruvik, in general, you cannot help but feel bad for the guy. So, if you haven't played it, I won't spoil too much, but he's one villain in a game I've played where I can't help but I can't get mad too much at some of the things he did. So, but this one did. He was a well-drawn character. All of the people in here in general were a well-made characters. Sebastian's fantastic. A lot of the monsters, amazing. It is interesting if you read the background story on some of these. Excuse me. That some of the monsters in here are reincarnations of some of Ruvik's nightmares, which is really interesting because as you play, you don't notice that. But if you read some of the notes or look at some of the backgrounds once you finish the game and you figure it out, you're like, oh, it makes so much sense. So I found that quite interesting. I do plan, obviously, on replaying it just because I want to platinum it. It's going to take me a long ass time because there's a lot of keys missing. There's only a couple map pieces, so thankfully that won't take as long. But definitely recommend this game, especially for horror fans. As I said, it will give you jump scares galore. And it's full of plenty of gore, plenty of action. I mean, I don't know what else you could want from a horror game. Like, this is fantastic. I cannot say anything more. I mean, I'm going around in a loop continually saying this. And especially the intro music. The intro right here, if you watch my first video and you hear it, it is so good. It's a really cool intro. Brilliantly well done game. So, personal score, gave it a 9 out of 10. So, if you're adding up as we go, it's hit a 93 out of 100 or a 9.3 out of 10, however you prefer. So, it is definitely an A-rank game. Yeah, thinking about it now, I might have scored it a little too low, but I was kind of disappointed with the replayability aspect. Yes, I give it props for being a long game. However, that makes it hard to replay right away. So, that plus Didn't really have the extras I was looking for. So I think overall it was a really good game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I was trying to make sure I can actually count and add. Sometimes I have problems. So yeah, anyway, I do recommend this game if you're a horror fan like I am. There is a second one. For those of you that did not know, there is an Evil Within 2 that explains more story that happens after this one. Kind of a completely different storyline. Sebastian does come back, but most of the other characters do not. It's a new baddie, you get new partners, things like that, new areas, new maps. So if you play this one and you enjoy it, there is a second one. That one did not get as good as a review as this one did. I do have it on my playlist that I might play for the channel if it ever gets spun. So you guys might have that to look forward to. But other than that, definitely buy this game if you're a horror fan. Just saying. But thank you guys so much for watching this review. I know it was a lot longer probably than some of the other ones. I couldn't help but glorify this game. Definitely not my top scored game so far. I believe that is still sitting with Attack on Titan. Let me look. And that's because I have a huge bias. Yep. So, highest scoring game so far that I've played is Attack on Titan with a 97. And then Resident Evil Village with a 96. And then we go Evil Within, Resident Evil 7, and then The Dark Pictures. So I've played 5 for the channel. We're going to keep on continuing. Eventually that list is going to keep growing and growing. So maybe somebody can dethrone Attack on Titan. But I was pretty prejudiced for that game. So that's why I got such a high score. So thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.